And I'm going to share the screen with agenda. Okay, so again, hello everyone for me after a long break. So yeah, today we have several topics, and the typical topic of every meeting is to collect feedback from previous week from the moderator, so from issue treasurers and discussion moderators. It was last week, it was Dan and William.
Yep. So were you asking for a report on things that were brought up? Is that what you're asking?
Yes. I'm asking if there was anything that, was discussing in the meeting.
Yeah, a couple of things. Michael opened quite a few issues this last week for security related tasks. Most of them are minor issues. They're, things like we don't do a URL verification on I don't remember what it was. It's a fairly minor it's like it's just good practice, making sure that we're validating URLs and things like that in a few places where we're not. So there are a lot of little things like that. Most of them I expect aren't going to be too painful, but there are quite a few of those that were just opened up. There was a bug going on with the AWS ALB that I think, oh, Michael's actually fixed it since then. Dude, Michael's so prolific.
Okay.
Like carrying the whole project on his back over here. And then, yeah, we had a lot of nothing too crazy. I am hearing some issues in the latest version of just RBAC permissions causing headaches and causing UI errors. So I'll get I was going to try to verify that and then get a bug in for that. And then, oh, there's one other thing that I wanted to bring up from all of these. There have been a number of bugs reported around the terminal and having it error out. And I think, let's see if I can find the example of these. I closed one just because I think that there's a PR that's going to fix it, but I'm not 100% sure.
Do you want to open any issue?
Yeah, issue 9951. This one I closed just because I expect it's going to be fixed by the PR. But in this case, they're getting frozen connection. If you look at the PR that's linked at the very bottom, 9895, there are 3 issues that are linked in the PR, and then there are like several other issues mentioned in the comments that are expected to potentially have a fix for this. So I think the fix is there. Michael put the fix together. So we'll see if it actually closes all these issues, but it's just something to be aware of, that there are quite a few issues that were reported around this feature. So I'm curious if this fix is actually going to fix all of these issues, or if some of them will still remain. But just to be aware that that's an area.
If I'm not mistaken, it's released. It was cherry picked 8 years ago. Supposed to be already released.
Yeah, into 246, which is the one that was just released, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have anything to add. I think, yeah, thanks Dan for those issues.
Got it. All right. So that means we need a volunteer to be primary next week, and someone who wants to help. Anyone? Okay, in this case, I guess I can volunteer myself because I keep every time I do it like 50%. So even though I did it a month ago, maybe won't hurt to do it again. So I want to be a primary from next week. Anyone wants to join?
I can do secondary.
Yeah, thank you. How come I can see your name here?
Yeah, kind of near the bottom.
Uh,
Five, bottom, I think.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, then we can move to the topics. So we have a few today. First topic actually from me. So I just noticed that in the Argo CD repo, we've accumulated a lot of images that we use in documentations, mostly screenshots. So this is how it looks like. So we have assets folder under the docs. And the problem is that this folder keep growing. It's already 16 megabytes. And we never can clean up. Basically, even if we delete those files now, they will stack in the history, and next person who do git clone will re-download all those files. And that's a problem, basically. So repo kind of going to grow. So the proposal is to create a dedicated assets repository. Name is subject for discussion, but that's the most obvious name I could think of. So it's assets. And there we can have, I'm assuming we can use that repo across different projects. So we might have, subfolders per project. And then, we can reference URLs from that repo in other projects. Yeah, and anyone thinks it's a bad idea? That's the question.
I like the idea of trying to move assets out of it. I'll maybe suggest another just not well thought out proposal.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on using like the wiki repo that like GitHub gives per project or per repo as the asset store instead? I don't know a lot about that. I don't know how much value there is in having it kept together versus this global one, right? That's kind of the question to answer.
Maybe it's not a bad idea, to be honest. Like the only disadvantage of assets repo, I think we won't use, only disadvantage of wiki repo is that I don't think it has this nice UI to view it as files. It's kind of like GitHub tries to visualize the repo as wiki.
Sure.
But it's,
Yeah.
I don't really, like, I would not use it, that UI either way. Like personally, I would just clone that repo as any normal repo and I would drop files there. So I kind of, I don't know. Maybe it's even better option because pretty much every project already has that repo, so we won't have to create any new repos. We would just start dropping files.
Yeah. This is a little bit of a pain. Does GitHub support LFS?
I think it does, yeah.
That could be an option to do LFS for those. I mean, you still have to clone them down, but at least they kind of get out of the history, right? And they go into a separate store.
Okay, I didn't. Okay. To be honest, I know LFS exists and I know it does what it does, but I never tried to do it. I have never tried to use it by myself. So I kind of not qualified to say, is it going to be convenient or is it going to be a pain for everyone?
Yeah, it does add. It's been about a year since I used it. There's some initializations steps, I believe, unless Git has changed that recently, where you basically like pull in those blobs. It might be worth exploring because then it's basically like a win-win, right? It stays in the repo, but doesn't affect like, if the overhead is low to contributors to use LFS, that could be nice. I do like the idea though. Like I think having this binary blobs in the Git repo and this ever growing is not great. So I think we should do something.
To be honest, I would maybe try LFS, and then I'm worried that it might just stop people from uploading any images. I feel like mostly, we get contributions, documentation
Yeah.
contributions from someone who don't work with Argo on daily basis, and I mean,
Yeah.
don't contribute to Argo on daily basis. So it might be too much for them to set up Git LFS. Okay, so
That's fair.
we have those two options, and I feel like I cannot make a decision right now. I guess I want to try myself Wiki and
Yeah,
and large file system, and yeah.
I
Okay.
agree. A little more research, maybe.
Okay, but at least I confirm that it's definitely a good idea to get rid of those files and move them somewhere else. Okay, so let me please try. I just want to try Wiki and set up Git LFS and kind of Wiki seems to be the most promising option, to be honest, right now after speaking with you. Okay, thank you for feedback. I guess I will just update this the decision in the meeting. Okay, if there is no more comments about this issue, we have issue from Regina and Eugene, and I'm just going to open discussion here. And Reggie, do you want to take over and describe the topic?
Yep, sure.
Okay, and I can just keep sharing.
First of all, I want to say that today my whole team is here in the meeting, which is nice. We're a team of 5, so they're here. When we, I wanna, maybe I will first describe the need that we have, the requirement. Oh, thanks, thanks, Dan. So when we have started using Argo CD, we used it primarily for managing infrastructure of the clusters, such as monitoring and different management products. And then with time, developers have started using Argo CD as well for their business applications. And when the developers came into play, they at first, we were the ones that were creating the app projects for them. And then the developers were creating the Argo apps under that project. We have given them explicit permissions on what clusters they have access to and what privileges on the apps they have. But at some point, they are required to be able to create those projects by themselves so that they will be independent from us, independency of Argo CD admins. And we were looking for ways to do that, basically without letting them destroy the clusters. Because if we gave them permissions to create Argo projects, then it could possibly lead to permissions on creating cluster scoped resources and other elevated things that are not desirable. But we didn't really found a way to on one hand, let them create those Argo projects, but on the other hand, still protect the clusters. And first, my first question is whether this is something that has come up from other users, such a requirement. And maybe there is some Argo CD native way to do that we have missed.
I think I can share, at least I know one feature of Argo CD. It's not super popular because it's recent. So we have project scoped clusters and repos, and that was an attempt to simplify onboarding. Like to use that feature, someone still has to create a project, but and then
Mhm.
project can be just sitting there. It kind of gives no permissions to anyone. And then end user, the developer, can register a cluster only for that project. And then to register a cluster, developer needs to provide cluster credentials and specify that it's for this particular project. And then that's it. It's kind of self-service. If developer able to prove that, if developer has credentials to a cluster, then we should not stop him from adding it into a project. So at least, and I guess only missing bit is like someone just need to do this simple operation and create project that give no permissions.
Does this approach, is it able to also protect the clusters in terms of the whitelisting of cluster scoped
Yes.
resources?
No, it's not. Yeah, actually, it's just a part of a puzzle. It's like, I think we can just use project scoped clusters to eventually get the full self-service process. Kind of, it just random thoughts. Like on the fly, I'm thinking of introducing a clone operation. That can be a simple option. So basically, we can create a template project. Admins can create template project that has necessary whitelistings and no clusters, no repositories. And then end users can clone those projects, and that would guarantee that they get empty project that doesn't give them any permissions, and then they can use project scoped clusters and repos to actually give themselves permissions to deploy. That's one idea. Yeah.
Okay. No, it's good. I'm just trying to understand it a bit further. And this, okay. So this template project that you're talking about, can we enforce the users only cloning that one, or?
Yeah, I guess that's. I feel like I come up with this idea. So cloning it would be a new thing. Like cloning right now don't exist.
Oh, it doesn't exist. Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. So one way it seems like, I'm not sure if it's the best experience or not, but basically we could say yes, like developers can clone projects, and and then they can. They already have cluster scoped. So project scoped clusters and repositories. Okay, and there is another feature that's also kind of in the same area. We already have global projects. Global projects actually meant for admins to set up system level restrictions on all projects. I feel like it kind of overlaps a little bit with templates, the template projects that I was trying to describe. So it's already possible today to create a project, set up maybe deny lists for some resources on that project, and then in Argo CD config map you can you just need to make some changes in Argo CD config map, and that global project would be kind of inherited by all the other projects. So it's already there as well.
What if we, what if we extended that inheritance? Sorry, Regina.
No, go ahead, Michael.
Well, what if we extended the inheritance to allow inheriting from any project
Are you able
instead
to
of just a global
move at
project?
all? Did you have surgery?
Jake, I think you got a hot mic.
I just had the X-ray of the GI.
I have a mute button. Jake?
Oh, you did?
Sorry, I'm going to mute you.
All right, I'm gonna call downstairs.
You want to just
See
mute
you.
him? Go ahead and just mute
Okay.
Jake. If
Yeah.
you've
Yes.
Cool. Sorry. So the idea was allow inheriting from like non-global projects. So for example, if I have sort of an organization of 100 people at Intuit, and I want them to restrict the 10 teams that they sort of serve, they can create their own top level project, not all the way at the global level, but something that makes sense for all of their teams. And then the projects underneath them would be restricted by that sort of parent project.
It's already, it's possible with the global project, because global project is not like 100% global. It's we just use labels. Basically, we're saying you can specify a label. You can use labels on a project to specify which global projects kind of inherited by some other projects. Actually, maybe so you kind of saying maybe instead of cloning, use this inheritance hierarchy and then
basically you'd crawl up the tree, and then
Mhm.
if you ever hit a project which prevents an operation, you reject it.
Yeah. So, and I'm trying to think of like what the end user experience would look like. Let's say we have like 5 global projects, each one define a set of, restrictions, and then we can just let end users to create their own project kind of under one of them. Is it?
What does it mean under one of them?
It's so basically it is possible to create a project that has no applications. It only has restrictions, kind of, it has settings related to which resources can be managed, and then end user can create a project and apply a label, and label would tell to Argo CD that this particular end user project must inherit all the restrictions from one of those several global projects. So it's kind of project hierarchy. Yeah.
I understand, but correct me if I'm wrong here, there is no way to enforce the
Yes,
developer
I
to
know
that label, right?
Yeah.
So basically, if he doesn't, he can skip all those restrictions and
Well,
have fun.
I
right?
mean, you could use something like like OPA to do those restrictions, right? If you have that set up in your cluster, which you might not, but I mean, there's third-party tools to do those restrictions based off of, various RBAC rules that they have for Kubernetes permissions.
Yeah, since you've already mentioned OPA, what we have currently done, because we didn't really find a way to enforce the developers to put the labels so that we can distinguish their projects from other projects that are created in the system. There is a workaround that Eugene from my team has designed, and it is it is kind of external to external to Argo CD, and this is being currently developed in our team. Mohan, who is also on the call, is developing that. I would like to ask Eugene maybe to, if that's okay, to describe the architecture of the solution that we have done internally, and then maybe to hear, maybe some of that, or would be nice to have in Argo CD. I don't know.
Yes, sure. What we have done, we have developed some proxy for Argo CD API. That means that our users cannot use directly Kubernetes API to create Argo CD projects. All interaction that they have is using API. And we have a proxy that checks if a user is, if the request comes from users that have proper credentials, and we change credentials, into the proxy, and we change credentials to privileged ones and add a label. That magic label is added, and now we can use that label in our policies, in our gatekeeper, actually, not OPA policies, to check projects for accordingly to our policies.
And I'm curious, where is the source of truth kind of in your case? Like, how do you know eventually which user, should have permissions to access certain cluster and which don't?
According to their usernames, we have privileged users and not so privileged.
So
So
basically, you have some like.
so when so when an so-called non-privileged user accesses the cluster, we check in the proxy, we change his authorization to a privileged one and force a label on the project that this user creates.
Mhm.
It's I don't think that this is a very good, very elegant solution, but it works for us.
And just to clarify, do you already use those global projects? Like,
Not we. Unfortunately, we didn't know about it. The first time I hear that probably we need to follow the development more tightly.
Mhm. But
Actually, I consider them. But I didn't see a way to force the developers using those global projects.
yeah, there is no way. It's like the global projects were created even for different reason. It was not meant to it was meant to help admins. The real use case was to be able to quickly create a sync window that denies syncs for the whole company. That was the main inspiration.
I think this is a pretty similar problem to the app of apps problem, where basically if you have an app of apps pulling from a repository that developers can write to, any developer can write an app that can manage Argo CD itself. So they have admin. What's been discussed is adding sort of an allowed projects field to the application spec to say, you're allowed to add apps, but they have to use one of these, whatever many projects to restrict it. I think that something similar could exist for projects. So you could have an app of projects. Argo CD admins own the top level application. They control that spec and they say, you can create a project in this application, but it has to be restricted by this global project, or it has to inherit from this list of other projects. That way the developers can go create a project spec in that GitHub repo, it auto syncs, but they can only create a project that has certain restrictions.
So you're describing kind of app project set, right?
App project set would be, so this is sort of an app of projects versus an app project set. App project set would be a template, you'd have a controller. An app of projects would use the Argo CD controller.
Oh, wait, sorry, I lost you. Are you discussing what I have written in the proposal, or this is something else? Sorry, I lost you in the last couple of sentences.
Yeah. Sort of as a contrast. So your proposal restricts via templating. So you have certain hard-coded fields. You keep people from editing them by only letting them set the templated fields.
Yeah.
That requires its own controller. If you had rules in the Argo CD application controller that said, okay, the application spec says only allow projects which, adhere to this global project, then you can allow developers to add project specifications to a GitHub repo. And then the Argo CD application controller enforces the rule that it inherits from a global project. So it's not templating, it's
pretty clean though.
Comparing fields.
Yeah, so you're saying like you just have RBAC that scopes the details of project creation. So like right now there's an RBAC for like you can create a project, but this would create a you can create, you have permissions to create projects with these scopes on them.
That RBAC seems to live in the application config though, right, Michael? Like you're basically, you would create an application that basically just has app projects in it, right? And on that application, you define some form of rule that says that all of the app projects in this application have to inherit from this global project.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's not RBAC in the sense of like, policy.csv. It's just a rule set on the top level application. And I think we need it anyway for the to secure the app of apps pattern. So this would secure the app of projects pattern.
It's just that I just remember a ticket that was created, and I think we discussed it even in the past about extending existing allow deny lists in a project, and introduce this type of rules. So that would open a door to support kind of role level, I think it's called role level access controls. Basically use JQ expressions to specify on the project level what can be created using this, little expression. So imagine if you have a project that has applications that produce projects, and with that feature, we could implement the checks that you described, Michael. Like we could say here, you allowed to create projects only if
that and that and that.
yeah, and then a bunch of things. So and this is that was required for a different reason. Use cases kind of described here. That was, we wanted to let users to limit what kind of custom resource definitions they can create. But yeah, maybe we could.
Oh, and so then it can be combined with the global project, right? Because it can require it can require using I don't know, this or another maybe global project, and then what is actually allowed, not allowed, and all that will be delegated to what is on the global project, something like that. Or
I need to think. Somehow I was thinking, let's say you have those, like you might have, if we, it's kind of in lines with what was Michael proposing. We could have a project that's only host applications that create projects. And then in that Uber project, you can define a set of rules that says, okay, this set of users can create
I think it's even simpler than that. So I'm the boss of the Argo CD cluster. I create this project, and it has this JQ filter. And I have my top level application. I'm like, devs, you're allowed to create projects. Just drop them into this GitHub repo. My application will auto sync them. But my application is restricted by a project which has this JQ filter that loops through all your labels and makes sure it has this global label set.
Yeah, it is complicated. So it definitely not like a native, I would not call it great experience, but it might work. Yeah.
Today, Michael, does the project give the ability to restrict on that label? Or is that what this issue is right here, this filter support thing?
I think that's what this does. So there
Okay.
are two places the label matters. One, the label needs to be on the developer's project spec, because it needs to point to the global project, which you control. And two, you have to actually check that the label exists before letting them create or update that project, which lives in this filter in your admin project.
And the filter, you originally had the filter on the application config, and it sounds like now it makes sense to do it on the project config.
Sure. Yeah. If it's a label instead of like a dedicated field, then I think the JQ filter makes sense. If it became a dedicated field, I think it would make sense to set it on the application spec itself, just because that's a common pattern.
Yeah, that's fair. It seems a little more powerful being able to use the JQ expressions on the project level because you could do other forms of restrictions, right? On other types.
We basically become OPA.
Yeah.
Like,
I think
Yeah.
this is really a thin line, isn't it? Because it's like it's a thin line because it is some kind of policy management, yeah. So it's really I don't know, maybe it's not really clear whether this is something that Argo City should do, or really, yeah, some kind of extended integration with OPA, Kyvernon, and it doesn't matter, yeah, or one of those.
I had the same feeling. I thought that if we want to support, I guess that the real use case is to simplify projects, creation and make it self-service. I feel like if we do it, I would just do it so that it would be straightforward to use. It's like a first-class feature, because you already have a solution in kind of using OPA, and it looks like if we introduce this policy like mechanism in Argo CD, it's not much better than just using third-party system that does the same set of checks.
I would be interested in writing a quick proposal to secure basically app of projects and app of apps, and maybe include an inheritance model for the projects. That's sort of three different things, but I think they all kind of get towards the same problems.
Yeah. I wanted to propose to consider maybe support inheritance of projects, and let use that inheritance in our back rules. In this case, it's still flexible because users can use Casbin to define who can do what, and hopefully maybe it gives it's not going to be a challenge for each and every user to figure out how to use this set of features to eventually get self-service with project creation.
So you'd have to use the API to create that project, right? You couldn't use GitOps.
Yes, if we go this route, then it would be kind of API UI driven. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so then having the restriction on the application, the parent application, gets you that second piece of letting it be GitOps driven instead of CLI.
Yeah. Okay, so I will definitely make sure to upload that video and link it to the talk, because I think we had a good discussion, but I already forget all the ideas that were proposed. Okay, we have 5 minutes left. Did I get it right that we basically have a lot of ideas, and maybe Michael will have time to document some of those ideas in the proposal?
Yeah, I think I'll pour a whiskey tonight and see if I can get through a proposal.
Sorry for the background noise, not sure if you can hear it, but okay, I guess maybe let's use the next 4 minutes to quickly check the next topic. It's again Regina and Eugene. Do you think is 4 minutes enough to talk about this topic, or we can move it to the next week?
Eugene, what do you think?
I think we can definitely move it to the next week. No problem.
Okay, yeah, I think we're ready.
So what's to think on the current topic? What's the ideas, really?
Yes.
Okay, I think in this case, yeah, we already pretty much run out of time and we can wrap up. Let me stop sharing, stop recording.